Welcome back to the Producer Podcast Highlights. Today we're continuing our crew conversation series as we transition from the production side of the industry to the post-production side of the industry and continue chatting with some of our Season 5 guests. So without further ado, let's get started. Joining us first, we have VFX supervisor Patrick Murphy of Kappa Studios.
I guess it's kind of patience to some degree, right? You need to make sure you have an established timeline and that people are hitting their milestones. But it's still, like I said earlier, it takes time, right? So there's a certain amount of patience. If you want something to look phenomenal, it's going to take a little time, right? And when it comes to visual effects, even if it's the simple things, it takes a little bit of time. So do what you can to allow that time to happen, right? Whether that's hiring the right visual effects supervisor or VFX producer who's going to present a timeline that you know can stick to it, or if you're just on a shoestring budget, make sure that you communicate as early as possible to whoever's going to do the work so they have as much time as possible to do the work, because these things take time. Like I said earlier in our conversation, I jumped on a shot this morning thinking it would take me 15 minutes, and I was overzealous. And it took me close to 3 hours, right? So, and it's little things you find out as you're in it, right? You look at the shot and you go, oh, that's a basic monitor comp, right? And then when you really analyze the shot, you're like, oh, wait, there's some interesting foreground objects that were in front of camera, but are so out of focus that they're barely visible, but they're causing tracking errors, and you're having to try 3 different tracking applications to extrapolate the data off this plate. And you're like, I cannot believe this simple shot is taking me this long, right? So it's little things like that. So I think doing what you can to buy time. That's my answer. Either buy the amount of time you need at the beginning or buy it somewhere in the middle or towards the end. Be the buffer to allow the creative process to happen as much as you can without hurting yourself or hurting the show. That would be what I would say. And that's a lot of what I do here for the guys. Like, we have got deadlines and we do everything we can to stay to them. They're internal milestones and deadlines. But, you make a promise to a client, you're like, hey, listen, we're going to have all your visual effect shots in by the time you do your color session today at 2 p.m. And like, this is actually happening. So I'm sharing this with you. And there's only like 14 shots in the show. It's the simple shots. And there's one shot in particular that I think is not ready to go in there yet. So it's a matter of doing what I can to buy time. And so what I did is I changed the clients here all day, so they don't care when we do the color session. I said, hey, it's not happening at 10 o'clock. It's happening at 2 p.m. today. Okay, that's great. So I just bought my guy 4 hours to kind of sort that shot out so I can make that. And then if that doesn't work out, when we're done here, if I go take a look at it and it's not quite there yet, I'm gonna go, hey, listen, Ashley, I'm sorry, the shot's just not to our liking yet. We can show it to you. I'll show you where we're at, but I don't want you to think that's the final end result. So all that to say is that it's about buying time, whether you're buying time you're just buying time to make sure that it can be the best that it can be. These are creative projects. These are creative endeavors, right? And as artists, you don't finish, you abandon. That's the key thing. You never finish it, you abandon it. But at some point you got to abandon it, right? My advice as a producer is be the champion of the project that you are and do whatever you can to buy people the time they need to do to get to do the job. At some point, commerce and creativity are going to come smashing together, and one of them is going to win, and that's the producers. That's to the producers inside. So.
Next up, we're joined by colorist John Clay Burnett.
I mean, I think you hit on it earlier. It's communication. It's really important to know what the deliverables are total in the end, and then what the deadline benchmarks are going to be along the way to get there. When are things expected? I've done post supervising a little bit because I was helping with color. I was helping manage a lot of those pieces that come together. I was doing some of them, but I was helping manage some of the other folks and putting it all back together as well. And it's just important to know what the deadlines are and to check in with people, even a few days out. It doesn't help to say, I like questions of, are we still on track to hit thus and such deadline? And that's tough. I try not to do that day of alone, because then if somebody forgot or missed a thing, that can be a little too late to get it done. Making sure you're, whatever the necessity is, it could be a week out, it could be what's needed. or 3 days or 5 days, whatever it is, to give them enough run time to say, oh, I didn't understand, and to pivot and then still deliver by the deadline and get what you need done, is really, really helpful. And then I've been on stuff where they set up a Slack group or some sort of easy communication that can even have different channels in there of who's talking to who through the production. And I found that to be helpful. You can hop on and message people. You don't have to get into all the text messaging and all that. You can get notifications and just keep on top of links or notes or questions. And then you can hop on phone calls, Zoom calls, whatever else, as an aside from that, to have your other communication. But it can be helpful to get multiple people on the same page very quickly, to have some sort of communication channel that way.
Continuing today's crew conversations, we're joined by editor Tracy Robinson.
I would say over budget for time if you have the ability. And whatever number of weeks you have in mind, double it if you can.
Okay.
Because if you're making a movie, as much as you want to get it done, you want to get it right. If you're in a hurry to get it done, you run the risk of then wasting the audience's time. And I've seen indie Christian films where most of the scenes can either be cut in half or chopped altogether. Mm-hmm. So a great film can turn out to be a mediocre film if too many details are neglected in post-production. And I think a great film is made up of thousands of little details. And so it's critical to give yourself and your editor the time to get them all right.
Up next, we'll hear from composer Ben Botkin.
Probably check in with your director frequently and make sure your director is hitting the milestones kind of that need to be hit from this stage to this stage to this stage, because it's kind of like a domino effect is not quite the right illustration, but basically what happens here, if this person's late, then this person's late. If this person's late, then this person's late. It's double late. And it affects everyone downstream. So certain milestones have to be hit. It's like the book Around the World in 80 Days. You can go around the world in 80 days if everything's on time and everything hits, and you have the right allowances for extra time. So depending on the experience of the director, the producer might just need to be that, and this is usually what producers are. Producers often need to be just that super practical, like no nonsense. We have a deadline to meet. We have people to pay person to just come alongside and say, hey, this is not important. And I've seen some scenarios. I think there was one project where I had to talk with the producer and I said, the director is getting caught up on revisions of 1 or 2 cues that I don't think we haven't even discussed these as being key cues. Mm-hmm. And it's affecting my ability to move on and finish things up. So could you maybe talk to the director, or you and me and the director talk about how important certain things are as you get near the end. Because once you get into creative mode, and this could be true for the composer, or it can be true for the director, or you can start to get zoomed in on one thing and forget the larger perspective. So I'd say as long as the producer is doing, the producer job, which is just to make sure people have what they need when they need it, and checking in with the director, checking in with team members if he or she has reason to think there might be hiccups. Those are all very helpful things just to continue to keep the project moving along without too many hiccups.
For sure.
I appreciate producers because I know it can often be kind of a thankless role. You all these creative people trying to be creative, and the producer might feel like, well, I'm the bad guy. He says, no, we can't afford that, or no, we don't have time for that. But someone has to be that guy.
Yes.
Someone has, if those are very important people to have on any project. And if they don't exist, then projects never happen.
Yeah, I've seen that happen before. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And rounding out this episode of the Producer Podcast Highlights from the post-sound world, we're joined by Nathan Ashton.
It's finding a team that works for you, not just works under you, but is working alongside of you. And then develop that team. Don't be afraid to not hire somebody next time if it didn't go well. But if it did, you have already done a lot of the work for your second project in how do you communicate? What sort of pitfalls are we going to have? Maybe even with this post-sound crew, where do I need to help them find another resource? My favorite things are dialogue editing and Foley.
Okay.
And Foley is underappreciated. On set, they're focused on the dialogue, so they're not getting all the nuance of clothing. In fact, they spend a lot of time making sure you don't hear the clothing.
Yes.
So a good Foley team breathes life back into a very sterile environment. So if you were working on a project and you're like, it didn't have the life that it wanted, and then the producer say, well, I liked this part, I'm going to find a better this part, and the next time we're going to have a better team. And I certainly do appreciate loyalty. When I've worked with somebody, we've been through the trenches, and we've learned to communicate. They were the necessary jerk, and I was the necessary jerk when I needed to be, and the project was made better for it. That's somebody I want to work with again. If they were an unnecessary jerk, then I don't want to work for them again. If they made my job harder, I will charge them more next time. That's a little tongue in cheek, but we're developing a relationship, the director and producer and me. If I'm the lead guy for the audio post cohort, I want to develop a long-term relationship, and I want this film to succeed because I want this producer to succeed. I want this director to succeed. I want this writer to succeed. I want the actor to succeed because I want them to make more movies so that they can pay me again. I mean, no, I love the craft. I love the whole process, and success means we do get to do it again. Disney even said, I don't make movies to make money. I make money to make more movies. And I want to develop that relationship with the producer, go through the trenches, come out the other end veterans, and trusting one another and ready to do it again, smoother, faster, bigger, better, awesomer on round 2 and 3 and 5. So I think a question I get from a lot of young filmmakers, and I hated it when it was told to me initially, is that this is an industry that is as much what you know as who you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated it because I didn't know anybody.
Yes.
And I thought, that's not fair. That's not nice. But I have not done projects. Projects have come across my radar, or I knew of it, and I would lobby hard to be on it because I thought it was cool, and they would go with somebody else, and I'd listen to it, and I'd say, man, I could have done better than that. And maybe I could have, but I didn't. It wasn't my gig. Legitimately, that crew had been through the trenches together before. They trusted each other before. That's where the who do you know? It's not just who do you have in your Rolodex, but who have you gone through the fire alongside? And that loyalty, honoring that loyalty, is more than just courteous. It's you can trust it. And you can hire somebody you've never worked for that might be superior, but maybe not, you know? So getting to know people in this industry is actually getting to work with them, for them, and going through the fire with them, and then coming out the other side with some sense of trust.
I like the way you put that in why that is such a big thing in our industry. It makes a lot of sense when you think of it that way.
It also makes it obtainable.
Yes.
And when you go to network, you don't have to look at impressing people, and because you're not there, you are impressed by when you finally pick up your weapon and you charge the enemy and you make something together. That's when people get impressed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's why referrals are huge. If I've been working with you and you tell your friend, this guy is trustworthy, they trust you, therefore they trust me. I don't even have a website anymore because I'm getting all my work. I'm getting all my work through referrals, and I just haven't had time. I would love to have a website because people will contact me, and I'll say, "Oh, go to my website," and then the website just proves that that Micah's referral was valid because Michael said Nathan's awesome. And I go to Nathan's website and, hey, it looks awesome. So I trust Michael. The website proves that he was not on drugs. And so I can hire this guy. But I haven't had time to do the website, and I haven't needed to because it's just all people that I've fought with before or tangentially that they've heard about me through somebody else and decide to give it a shot.
Yes.
So you can network with people just by going up and saying, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm Micah. I'm Nathan," and tell them what you do. And then talk about their kids and their dog and their life. Because it's as much about life as it is about filmmaking. Mm-hmm. And you've got to balance those things. Every project that comes across my desk, full circle back to budget, I've worked for ultra low budget projects. I've worked for free. I've also worked on $1 million films. I've worked for HBO. I've worked for Spike. And I make as much money in a day for HBO as I do on some independent ultra low budget films. So the pay scale's really crazy.
Yeah.
And I have a wife who I love. I've got 3 kids. My second is going to college next year, so I'll have 2 with college bills to pay. I've got a house and 3 cats and a dog, and what else do we got in here? I got my son has a scorpion and a lizard, and a scorpion and a tarantula, and we have a lizard. So all these people want to eat.
Yes.
And we want to have a vibrant life. It's not just about the work. It's about living a life. So every time I get a project, we talk about it. We talk about the budget. I get to know the people. And then I tell them, let me think about this. And I take it to my wife and we talk. I take it to God and we talk. And we decide, is it worth trading this chunk of time for this amount of money to support these people and this film and this project? And if it's a yes, then we go for it. And it doesn't truly matter then what the contract is. We will deliver on time, on budget, with excellence. So there's been projects that they had $5,000, they had $2,000, but they were free. They needed $12,000, $15,000 worth of work. So they're going to get that quality because that's what the film needs to live and breathe, and not to be born premature and lacking in the excellence that it needs to have a life. So it doesn't matter what I'm being paid. It matters that the end product is what it needs to be. So that's kind of where my intersection of faith and life and work have to come together, or I'm going to burn out. And then the next time that I get called up to work, I'm not going to be giving the strength that everybody needs so that the producer can have a career, the director can have a career, the actor can have a career, the lighting can have a career. All these people that are reliant on the film succeeding, if I don't bring my A game, I let everybody down. So I've got to balance my life. And a producer helps do that by guarding the stuff, by making sure that the budgets and timelines that are put forward are reasonable and realistic, and nobody ends up dying too many times. We all take
Yes.
we all take hits. We all do. We all and we sign up for it. This is war. We are going to get shot, and we know it. But a good producer makes a robust team that can have some longevity and be vibrant, not just get the job done.
And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Producer Podcast Highlights. Stay tuned for news on season 7 of the show coming soon, as well as more Producer Podcast Highlights. Until then, make sure to like and subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as on Instagram.